This meeting is being recorded.
Well, now you all know. Good evening, or wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Mina Jane, and I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library in Massachusetts, which is in the US. And I am so thrilled to be here with CM Nascosta, Ann Aguirre, Kathryn Moon, and Lillian Lark. I just learned how to say Ann's last name. I've been reading her forever, and I feel embarrassed. But anyways, we're going to be talking about the rise of monster romance because we have a dream team here of, I see this in the chat, a dream team of monster romance writers, and I am so curious. So we're going to get to them in just a second. But before we do, I want to say a couple things. One, I want to thank the Friends of the Ashland Public Library who support all of our programming. I would also like to thank our authors for letting us partner with other libraries, because when libraries work together, we create magic. Not monster magic, just regular magic. So aside from like all of the fans from our authors, we also have patrons, obviously, from Ashland, from Tewksbury, Marlborough, and Rockport. So we're really thrilled to have you all here. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. I will be moderating those. And feel free to chatter away in the chat. I'll be looking at that during and after, because last time we did this, it was such a hoot. And I should say that we did this in February with CM and 3 other authors who didn't actually write monster romance. So I really needed to dig into this. So as I said, feel free to throw those questions into the Q&A and say whatever you want in the chat. We're all adults here. So I'm going to welcome CM and Kathryn and Lillian. And the way we're going to start is I'm just going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your maybe most recent book. Let's start with CM.
Okay, I'm CM Nascosta. I am an author from Cleveland, Ohio. I write monster romance. I am indie published. My most recent book was How to Marry a Marble Marquis, which is a crossover of Regency romance and monster romance. It's a very high steam, like paint by numbers Regency story. And then my next book comes out this month, at the end of this month. What is today? Is today June 1st? No, today's May 31st. It was supposed to come out today, but I pushed it back a few weeks. So it comes out at the end of June. And that is a blue ribbon romance, which is Morning Glory Milking Farm from the other side of the milking table, from the MMC's POV.
Oh, wow. I'm here for all of that. Anne?
My name is Ann Aguirre. I've been writing full-time since 2007. I am hybrid, which means I have some books that are traditionally published and some books that I have put out independently myself. The book that I am the most surprised by is Strange Love, and that's also part of the reason why I was invited to do this panel. My most recent title is book 3 in the Fix-It Witches series, and it's called Extra Witchy. The heroine is sort of non-traditional. She's been married twice, divorced twice, and doesn't really believe in love. And the hero is a professional living in his parents' basement type of person. So I kind of flipped the script and made her successful and him in need of saving. And I'm really proud of that book too, because I think it does some really interesting things with typical conventions.
You are so innovative, I think, in so many ways. Kathryn?
I'm Kathryn Moon. I'm from Northwest Ohio. There seems to be a lot of monster romance authors from Ohio. We get weird down here.
The eeriness of Lake Erie.
Yes. And my most recent book was Games with the Orc, which was the first book in a sex positive monster romance series called the Monster Smash Agency, where the monsters are sex workers and the humans are clients. And then my upcoming one is the 3rd book in the Tempting Monster series. So I've been kind of swimming in monsters this year. And yeah, that'll be putting a close onto that series. That one is like a polyamorous Why Choose romance series.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing. Lillian?
I'm Lillian Lark. I'm in Utah. I don't know of many other monster romance authors in Utah, though. Not like Not like with
Not
Kathryn.
Ohio.
No, not Ohio. I started my monster romance journey with writing Stalked by the Kraken not too long ago. I think it was like 2 years now. My most recent book was Entranced by the Basilisks. I've had to practice pronouncing that because so many S's. Think about that when you title a book. And that is 3, like the 3rd, the 2nd, depending on how I order the books in my Monstrous Matches series, with the first one currently listed being Deceived by the Gargoyles, which is each book in that series have different monsters with different parts. And I keep seeing the reactions and I'm just like, oh, my train of thought is gone. So happy to be here.
We're so happy that you are. All right, so let's dig into this. I have a bunch of questions that will sort of set the stage and then we'll answer questions from our attendees. So first of all, this is called The Rise of Monsters. So like my understanding of monsters back in the day was like vampires and shapeshifters, and that was like, whoa, that's crazy. So why do you think that there's been this whole other genre of monsters? And is it new, or is it always been there and it hasn't been visible? I'm gonna start with Anne for this question.
I think that it has always had its aficionados, but I think that it's really starting to come into its own in terms of people not being secretly a little embarrassed to admit, like, yes, the weirder the romance, the better I like it. I am bored of reading very typical human, let's say, centric interactions. I am here for the wildest stuff that can be dreamt of by the most incredible imaginations. So I think there has always been a market for it, but I think that it is really starting to come into its heyday. And I will be the first to admit, I was like at the head of the queue. I am the person that, like, if I'm playing a video game, like say Mass Effect or Andromeda, if there is an alien to bang, why would I waste my time with a human? I am 100% team bang the alien. But they never give me the content that I want. And that's why I started writing stuff like Strange Love, because I want to read and write the really weird and freaky sex. So, did that answer your question?
That probably answered more than my question, but thank you.
Excellent.
Kathryn?
Along with all of that Anne said, I also think that the rise of self-publishing allows for an author to say, I know this isn't like the marketable trope of vampires, but it's what I want to write and it's what I'm really excited about. So like, I'm going to go do orcs, or I'm going to go do tentacles. And like, they don't have to answer to a panel that's going to say, like, you can make that risk on your own. So I think that's probably part of it.
That's really so true. Especially like I remember when people said that Kindles became really popular after 50 Shades of Grey, because people wanted to read it, but they didn't necessarily want people to see what they were reading. So the self-publishing thing, I totally get. Lillian?
Well, everyone's like giving the answers that I was gonna give. So it's like, I think there's a joke to be made that there are a lot of the gargoyle girlies, the ones who watch the 90s cartoons, like coming to an age currently to be like, I loved Goliath and unabashedly love Goliath, and I want books like that, and that's what a lot of my readers are. So
I also love Goliath. CM?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything everyone has said. I think we've always been here. I think there was so much monster bent content in the like 80s and 90s that those readers, to Lillian's point, like they are primed for the adult version of that media. And we are here to give it to them. But yeah, I think we've always been here. And when you look at so much of fairy tale canon, and it's about, princesses marrying bears and, animal husbands. And we've always loved monsters. We've always loved the other. And yes, the rise of self-publishing, and I also think the pandemic played a lot to do with it, because we all sat home and with nothing to do other than reading, and when we all came out of it, we spent so much time with ourselves and we're like, I don't care anymore. So people just aren't as embarrassed, and aren't as precious about hiding the things they like. So yeah, ditto to all the above.
So somebody said in the chat, and we're going to dig into this a little bit, but it went by so quickly that I don't know who said it, was that monster romance is really interesting because the monsters aren't always who you expect. So let's start with, how do you create your monsters? What is the, not formula, but like, what are you looking for in creating the monster, which is the other character in your book? Kathryn?
Oh no.
You'll all get a first chance, so be prepared.
I'm gonna regret saying this, but it usually starts with like monstrous features. I don't know my characters that well until I'm writing a lot of the time. Like I'll tell myself maybe this has something to do with it, but no, it's for monster romance. It's generally, I'm like, what fun thing am I gonna use this time? So and then it comes into like, well, like, what is this world that I'm using like, and how would that affect that monster, and like how they viewed the FMC, if she's human or not human, and everything like that. Yeah.
Lillian?
Just to clarify, you don't mean monsters in the villain, right? You mean
Right.
like awesome. Just making sure.
I mean, monster
like
as a love interest.
Yeah, I will admit, similar on the Kathryn front, where like I may have a character in mind. I may be like, what personality attributes does this character have, and maybe are any of those personality things gonna, like, do they speak to me in a way to be like, oh, are they broody, like are they meant to be a gargoyle? But a lot of it's just like, what type of scenes do I want to write? And are they going to have nodding in them? Because then I'm going to write those scenes.
That dick do.
So like the joke that a lot of authors do is like, oh, I'm all vibes, no plot. And it's just like, yes, there are vibes involved and market research. And that sometimes is how some people start.
Okay, fair. CM?
That's where I start. I start with the vibes. Like 90% of my books are, it's no plot, it's just horny vibes. I'm just creating a vibe. What's the plot? Well, let me tell you about the vibe. And then the plot gets worked in when I figure out who the characters are and what kind of characters I want to create. 90% of my books have started with a shitpost between friends. Like, oh, it would so funny if I did a minotaur milking farm, and suddenly that turned into a book. And I did the exact same thing with Girls Weekend. It was like a joke with my artist friend, and it turned into a 4-book series. But for me, it starts with like, oh, the idea, and then it turns into, and now how can I make them relatable? Because I can get into like the fun body parts later, but like, how am I going to make them relatable, and then work in those fun body parts from there?
I love it. We will talk about body parts in a bit. Ann, how about you?
I would have to say that I usually start with like an archetype for the monster. Like, and when I say archetype, I guess I really mean trope. Like, okay, in book 1, Strange Love, Xylar is very much a cinnamon roll. He looks like a monster, but he's extremely beta. He has low self-confidence, and he needs this underachieving woman from Earth to come and convince him that he's actually an awesome being. In book 2, Helix is a grumpy AI who hates basically everyone and everything. So he's the grumpy archetype. Book 3, Toth Crag / Orin is definitely morality chain. He's been reared in a certain way that makes him see killing as the solution to basically every problem. The only person that he won't kill is his love interest. Everyone else would be more convenient if they died or just stepped out of his way. He's not too particular on which.
I'm okay with that. And I have to say, and I agree with everybody in the chat, that Helix is probably my favorite character of all time. Just that accidental being able to talk dog, hilarious. So this, actually, you're up first, Lillian, for this question, which I think is really something that you had mentioned earlier. Sam says, it seems like gargoyles are the new preferred monster, which I think there's so many, but do you think so? And how or why do you think we move from monster to monster? And I know you had said that you really do lots and lots of different monsters, as does everybody.
It's a hard one to say because it's talking about market trends, and like there are a lot of things that influence market trends. Like my biggest influence when I like sit down, right, is like, oh, like these books I really enjoyed. Like if I ever do get around to writing an Omegaverse, it'll be like, oh, because I loved Kathryn Moon's books, Omegaverses so much, that's influencing me. And so like we have these books that come out, and then they start kind of like a tidal wave of other authors being like, oh, I like that lights me up inside. I want to write a book with that type of a monster. And I think that's why we see those fluctuations of different monsters. Like we had the vampires, and then we have werewolves, and then now it's whatever monster like flavor that people are really digging. Like I think there was a little bit of a minotaur, probably because of the milking farm, because hit #1 in the Amazon store. A little hard to miss it. I love that book so much.
So I'm going to say that Helix is actually in Strangelove by Anne. Somebody's saying it's in love.
He's in both. He's not the love interest in Strangelove. He is in Strangelove, and then he gets his own book in Love Code.
Okay, got it. So CM, what about you? Why do you think, how or why do you move from monster to monster?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is market trend. I know you had asked the question back in February how we pick what we're going to write next, and like I made the comment then that I'm very bad at picking what the trend is going to be. I'm very, very bad at like predicting trends, so I don't even try to. But I don't like tracing trends. So, for example, my last book featured a gargoyle. Like I'm contributing to this boom of gargoyle romance, and I agonized over that for weeks, and I literally lined up like everyone else's releases to see like, am I going to be writing a gargoyle on top of someone else? Like, okay, well, there's enough distance between Jillian, and there's enough distance between Lillian and Jillian, and then there's enough distance between Katie, and I don't know who else is writing a gargoyle, but I'm going to be smack dab in the middle, and let's just like hold our breath and hope that it doesn't go unnoticed. So it's like there's a lot of really, really narrowing down those other releases and the market trends, and deciding on whether or not you want to follow the trend, you want to be a part of the trend, or if you want to buck the trend and try to start something new. And then there's a chance that something new is going to land with readers the same way. So yeah, there's I hate to say that there's a lot that goes into picking the monster, but sometimes there's really a lot that goes into picking the monster. And then sometimes it's just based on, what you've written before. Sometimes we just want to write something new. Like, I can't even believe I'm going to admit this out loud, but I am teasing in my next book a centaur romance. And that's something I swore I would never write. But like for the past couple weeks, I'm like, I just want to write a horse. And I don't even like horses. But it's in there. It's in chapter 2. I tease the centaur farm. So that's I guess that's something that's happening.
Centaur farm. Okay, I'll be looking for that. Apparently, so was everybody in the chat. So Anne, how do you pick your monsters?
I really am tremendously bad at picking trends, and chasing trends has never worked out for me at all. So I just write whatever I'm feeling like writing. Like I was really obsessed with Beauty and the Beast, but there were so many problematic parts to that fairy tale that just one day I decided, you know what, I'm going to write my own version, and I'm going to update it, and I'm going to fix literally everything that bothered me. And that book became Bitterburn. And I guess you would definitely call the hero of Bitterburn a monster, but he's not a particular trope or type, he's just a beast. And no spoiler, he stays a beast, because that ruins the fairy tale when he turns back into regular average Joe Prince.
I agree. So vanilla. How about you, Kathryn?
Yeah, I do think that there's like a certain amount of like market chasing, like with the gargoyles. Lillian's Deceived by the Gargoyles did so well, but I'm like CM Nascosta, where I did just write something with gargoyles, and like wondering about having someone else having just done it like put me off more than it made me chase it. But I also like I started this series 2 years ago, and I had everybody lined out. So I knew what I was doing from the start. And then it was just kind of like, well, now there's a lot of them, and like we're gonna go ride the wave. Like it's gonna be okay. So I don't know that it's necessarily intentional on authors' parts. Like we talked about like how we're all just kind of like the 90s babies who watched the gargoyles. And so like it was all that the seed was there for all of us. Like we all needed it a little bit.
I know. I couldn't believe Goliath never, Anyways, so CM, this question, it starts with you. It's a little bit more serious about what is monstrous? What does that mean to you? And how do you incorporate that type of question into your writing?
What is monstrous? So again, I'm gonna kind of echo what Lillian asked you. Do you mean what is monstrous as far as how do we, how we term it with our love interests, or what we consider monstrous in our worlds? Because in my world, the monsters are they're just people. They're just regular citizens of the town that most of my books take place in the larger world. Monsters just exist beside humans. Humans are usually the monsters in my world, as far as commodifying other species, and the gentrification of neighborhoods, and the erasure of native languages, and just homogenization of everyone in the larger world of Cambric Creek and beyond. And that's why Cambric Creek exists as, this little tiny beacon of like, everyone can actually come here and be themselves, and just be whatever monster they are, and they'll find a community here. So the humans are usually the monsters in my world. But what do I define as monstrous as far as my love interest? I think what we love about monster romance is the otherness, just being attracted to the otherness. And along with the otherness comes a lack of judgment, a lack of a lot of the judgment we get in our own world for the way we look, for the way we act. If you are, neurospicy, if you are queer, if you are, any and all of the above, monster romance is really judgment free when it comes to all that stuff, or it can be, or it could be, it's up to the author and the world they're creating. So, and that lack of boundaries is, I think, really what makes the genre so appealing, both to authors and the readers, because there's a book out there for everyone. There's a kink out there for everyone. There's literally a monster out there for everyone. If you like a big gruff cinnamon roll, you are going to find him in some monstrous form. And if you like a big gruff cinnamon roll with two peens, you're going to find him out there somewhere. You just have to find the right book. But yeah, it's a combination of the otherness, and then how do we make that otherness relatable for me?
So Jamie said in the chat, I went back to it because I love this. She said, monsters are in the heart, not the form. And I think that is really amazing in terms of what we're looking for in monster romance. Anne, what about you? Oh, sorry. Anne, what about you? What do you consider to be monstrous when you're writing?
I think that mainly just to satisfy the convention that it's exterior differences. And I think there's a fair amount of leeway, whether they have to be non-human or whether they can be alien. Or I have actually read some interesting romances where the hero started out as human but then began to feel so other that I would consider them to be monsters. But I have to agree with CM in that I tend to make humans the bad actors or the villains. Unless it's one of my alien stories and where there's only one human in the book, in which case then other aliens are rivals or antagonists. And I don't always think that villains need to have a really deep backstory, like, you know, they were traumatized and this is why they do these evil things. I think sometimes that kind of defeats the purpose, because you really don't want to romanticize them to a certain, unless you intend to do a spin-off and like redeem them or write a villain romance. I think sometimes it's okay for characters just to be evil because they're narcissists or they're assholes, or they are just morally reprehensible bad beings that do evil because they enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Which is
so
funny.
I would say monsters are people who savor other people's pain.
Mm-hmm. And that's interesting that you said that, because when I had the program with CM in February, we talked about that exact same thing, but now I forgot what I was going to say. So I'm going to move on to Kathryn and I'll come back to it.
Yeah, I'm inclined to go with the like monstrous is an interior thing rather than like a physical exterior. I think a lot of the times for me it's like a selfish lack of empathy in a character, that sort of something that's motivating them that like has absolutely no consideration for the rest of the world. In monstrous features, for like, I do like to try and write things without like saying that like this monster is beautiful, and just like write the features because I want it to feel other and unfamiliar. And I don't want like the main character to immediately be like, wow, what an exquisite monster, because I think that sort of like skirts around the joy of like falling in love with like a monster character on the page, and like having your idea of like what is beautiful change the more you could like spend time with that monster person. So yeah.
So the thing I forgot earlier was that CM had this amazing reaction to, do we redeem our monsters? And do you remember what you said, CM? Oh, you're frozen.
Yeah, we froze for a second. I froze for a second there. What was the question?
You had a great response to like, do you redeem your monsters? When we talked about this last time, and basically you were like, I don't want to redeem them. They're assholes. No.
I hate a redemption arc. I love a good redemption arc, but a redemption arc has to come hard earned, and a redemption arc needs to be rooted in our actions and the way we treat people, and not anything that has to do with anything other than the way we treat people and our actions. And sometimes I don't want to change that either. I just want the dicks to be dicks. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I love a redemption arc, and sometimes I don't want a redemption arc anywhere near me.
I love that. Sometimes dicks are just going to be dicks.
Redemption arc or make them worse. That's it. I can make him worse.
Wow. So Lillian, how about you? What do you consider monsters in your books?
Oh, like my villains are usually just bad actors. Like they're just usually bad people doing bad things, and those are the things that are like the main characters are striving against. I think like along with the whole monstrosity, like evilness is like on the inside is like a pretty general thing. I think it's very interesting, like, because we always look at monster romances like, oh, like they're so monstrous, they're so other. Wow, my brain is like cycling through. But like back to the what I really like about having a monstrous, or like monstrous in the sexy monster type of way, is so much of the you don't have to go based on anyone else's cliches. right? Like everyone has these assumptions. They're like, a vampire shows up, you can have all these assumptions about that vampire because they're a vampire. It means that they must drink blood. It means all of these things. And or like if you're reading a contemporary romance and a man does something incredibly insightful and emotionally intelligent, and people are just like, that would never happen. Like, you don't get to do that with Mon-Rom, because if we want to make very emotionally intelligent characters, then like they're monsters. They're not human, and you don't have to follow those rules.
You know what's really interesting is that none of you actually mentioned the word humanity in your answer. That because it has come up in other programs that I've done where we talk about the fact that monsters can be the most have the most humanity of all of the characters, and that goes to the inside and outside, I think, question. So let's get into what I like to call, and I know people have been talking about it, the shape of water question. Your monsters have every kind of anatomy there is. How do you decide, Anne, I'm going to start with you, on what the anatomy, the genitalia of your character is going to be, like the monster, I'll say?
Wow, this is a super fun question. I love this. I actually am constantly reading like National Geographic or Scientific American or like biological journals. There are actual cave insects, I believe, in Brazil that inspired the junk that I used to build the Barathi species in space. Basically, to like shorthand it, there are cave bugs that have flipped genitalia. The ladies have gynosomes, and the males have pockets that the women retrieve the sperm from. And I was like, that is fascinating. So I took that idea and I ran with it, and I gave my aliens like 4 gynosomes and 4 spermatozoa pockets. And there is some penetration, but it's reversed. And I mean, you would have to read the book to know just how weird it gets, but I'm pretty proud of that. And then basically I did the same thing with the species and the head tentacles. And like, do not Google snake reproduction if you're not really interested in that, but that's where I got the tentacle stuff for the aliens that are in book 2, Love Code. A snake love ball is actually a thing. I've seen pictures. It's pretty wild. And then also, like, I did the same thing for the 3rd book, which is Renegade Love, but I'm not going to tell you what creatures inspired that.
I think that you use a lot of, actual science to create your monsters, but I think that right now, snake genitalia or snake reproduction is trending on Google. Everybody in the room is checking it out. How about you, Kathryn? How do you create your monstrous genitalia?
I don't usually do research. I don't know if I have like a weirdly vivid imagination, or I'm usually just trying to think like what would feel really good and then like what would achieve that. So like, does it vibrate? Does it move? Does it suck? Does it pump? and then just kind of like build around that. And I try not to put like everything in at once, because as much fun as that would be, I try to like be like, okay, like a human dick doesn't really get to do anything other than like pop up. So like let's like not give one monster all the gifts.
Just Swiss Army knife.
Different perspective. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lillian, how about you?
I generally have like a limiting factor of like, okay, I'm gonna do this trope or this trope. Like if you're gonna do breeding as a trope, like there's a whole slew of like, what parts should they have if breeding is the trope? Yeah. if it's I don't research animal genitalia. I think Anne is really smart for doing that, but mostly I just type away. Like for the book I'm working on now, he's got two dicks, and I'm just like, okay, how do I make two dicks interesting? Because just two plain phalluses, they don't seem very interesting to me.
You're just like flopping around there.
Like, and so each of them have different assets that I won't talk about too much, but mostly I just start with like what do I really want to write, and then make it happen. Like I have Found by the Lake Monsters oviposition. Just like, how does that happen with the parts that, like, how does that happen? And then it's just a problem solving. I start from the end and like problem solve back and like, oh, so they would have this part and that part.
All right, thank you. CM, I was hoping that you would be the last person on this question.
I am regretfully one of the researchers. My search history is wild. My poor NSA agent is just, they learn a lot spying on me. And it cracks me up how often this question comes up, because I don't know how many of you in the audience for this chat were in the audience at a Polycon, but we spent a lot of time talking about echidnas, and then I spent more time talking about dolphins, and we learn a lot in the course of researching our books. And I too have a snake book on the roster, and I have spent a lot of time researching, how the vascular system works and how to get two of them coming out at once. And is it going to make it into the book? No, of course not. But I need to know that before I can actually write it. I have mild aphantasia, which means I don't really envision my characters very well. Like I have like character shaped lumps in my head, but I really can't see them. So I have to do the research to plug in those details mentally for myself. And then once I've established what kind of creature I'm doing, that's where my research leads me. And then from there, I have to determine, well, how's it going to fit? And then that has to be a consideration, like in the next step in like the peen pipeline, like, well, what kind of creature, what animal are we basing it off of, and how's it going to fit? What's it going to do, and how's it going to fit? So it's a multi-step system.
Fit is important. It's a very important question. In fact, it leads me to the next one, which is how do you use your sexual relations in your books and your characters to create intimacy when they are so different and they have to really figure out how they're going to have sex? Kathryn?
I think for me, not always, probably, because sometimes the sex scenes are just like, this is really fun, it's in my imagination, I want to write it. But a lot of the times, like, there has to be something in that scene that motivates like a change between the characters. I feel like I so far have written pretty intrepid heroines who are like, monster peen, let's go. So it hasn't been like a big question of like, oh, how do I use this? They're like, show me, like, let's do it. So but I think it is mainly it gets into just kind of your usual romantic situation of like, what is the dynamic before this scene, and how does this moment between them like alter what their relationship. Yeah.
Okay. Lillian? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah. Can you please repeat the question? Because I was having too much fun reading the chat.
I know, it just go by really fast. Just basically, how do you create intimacy with your characters when they have to figure out how they're going to have sex?
Oh, yeah. It's generally a lot to do with the tension. I do keep a lot of the sex scenes of like either I want it to happen or there is like something about their arc, like the journey they're going on, something is happening. I really like high intimacy situations that involve like character growth. Like whether it's them pushing the other person's limits of being like, oh, hey, you've never had a knot before. I like knots. But just like, it's all a conversation, right? That's the way it's supposed to be. Like, it's consent is key. There's a lot of like verbal conversation of like, hey, this is what's gonna happen. Are you okay with that? And it's of course done in the like, it's dirty talk. And I think it's super sexy. But it is like, as a, here's what to expect. And like, are we good? And generally it's like, yes, we are good. We are good.
So it's like the bolster in the middle of the bed, how it used to be back in historicals, you know, keeps them apart just long enough for them to get to know each other verbally. CM?
So I think that's an interesting question, because I think you can have like intimate scenes without intimacy, and then you can have a lot of intimacy in a scene that has absolutely no sex in it. So I think it depends on the scene. Because sometimes I will write sex scenes that are just sex scenes. They're about pleasure, they're about animalistic heat, and there is nothing necessarily emotionally intimate about it, depending on the character and where they're at in the scene. But then, 10 pages later, that same character will hook pinky around the FMC, and it is a million times more intimate than anything they have done in the previous 85 pages with each other's body parts. So for me, it just depends on the characters and where I'm going with that. As far as like the monstrous angle of intimacy, I like making it awkward. Like I like the characters kind of having the conversations about like, how is this going to work? Oh my gosh, I'm so much bigger than you. What position are we going to make this work in? And how does this come out? What do I do with it when it does? And it's I think sometimes we make sexy, well, not we certainly don't. We do an excellent job, but I think sometimes authors make sex scenes too like, it has to be like, insert slot A into port B, and nobody pees afterward, and somehow no one ever gets a UTI, and there's very little realism attached to it. But I think we here in Monsterland are putting so much realism in our sex scenes. Like, we are talking about consent all the time. Consent is the sexiest thing in Monsterland. We pee afterwards. So I just think there's a lot of those little elements that goes into creating an intimate scene that feels believable with monsters, and that's how I create my intimate scenes. It's like, how is this actually going to happen? How is this going to fit, and what are we going to do with it?
Okay, thank you. Anne, how about you?
Since my monster books are indie, that means I don't have someone telling me that I cannot do that, it's too risque or it's too strange. So that is a primary benefit. And as a writer, when I'm writing these books, I am writing them primarily to entertain myself. Like, these are all the types of things that I would want to read in a book. So if I think of a scene that's just really off the charts, and I'm like, I don't know that this advances the plot in any way, I'm still going to write this scene because I want them to do it on a spaceship because this is fun to me. And if readers disagree, there are many, many other people writing wonderful books that they can read instead. So I don't really think a lot about the intimacy. Many of my scenes do serve some purpose, though some of them are just for fun for me. But some of them I just like, for instance, when I have the morality chain hero, he is paired with Sunshine, who she was kidnapped, taken to space, put in a space circus, and then the space circus took out a loan in her name that she didn't know about, and then absconded and left her with a scary bounty hunter. She is just the most Sunshine, like, cool, I always wanted to meet a bounty hunter. I love this. This is cool. Will you be my new best friend? And this guy is like essentially worse than Boba Fett, who murders everyone, and suddenly he has this very small little being who's constantly hitting on him. how can you not just find that absolutely hilarious? And then when she starts trying to get him out of his uber killing mech suit armor, like, so what do you look like under that armor? And he's just absolutely flummoxed. Those are the types of scenes that entertain me, and I just want to write them. And then when she finally gets lucky, you're like, yes, she did it. You go.
Love it. Persistence. That works too. A couple people here in the Q&A have asked about gender, and that was one of my questions as well, is that in monster romances, there's sort of it can be sort of gender neutral or gender, like that question. But like, it seems like sort of the stereotypical male character is the monster in a lot of monster books. So do you think that there's, or are you, any of you writing books about where the monster is actually the female character? Go ahead, CM. Get us started.
So I just put a book out in a Kickstarter that I know probably a lot of the people in the chat subscribe to. It's called To Ravish a Rogue. It doesn't come out until October, but it features both a male and a female monster character. It is my favorite thing I have ever read. No, Run My Rabbit is still my favorite thing I've ever written. This is a very close second favorite thing I've ever written. I want all of you to read it the day it comes out. I think you're going to love it too. I wish we saw more female monster representation, and I can tell you why I think we don't. I think because this chat is why we don't. We've been talking about penis since we sat down, and we know that that's what our readers want. It's not what all of our readers want. And I would love to see more female monster representation. I would love to see more female monsters loving female monster representation. I wish there was a better market for it. I wish more readers were willing to embrace it, because if the readers embrace it, the writers are going to write it. And it starts with all of you guys out there first, because we have to keep, roofs over our heads, and we can't write books that aren't going to sell sometimes. So please read them, and then we will write them.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to comment on that?
I have coming up like a monster romance. It's the next book after Games with the Orc, Howl for the Gargoyle. But she is kind of like, she's newly turned into a werewolf. So it is a lot about like her finding herself in like the monster community. But I agree. I haven't felt like I am the voice to like offer like female monsters with women, or like a lot of the queer romance, and so I try to just be like a mouthpiece to like promote it. And it is out there, and there is some really great monster women, human men romance, like Surrendering to Scylla by Ren K. Morris. But yeah, I think there is a little bit of like that appeal of self-insertiness that makes the human woman male monster so popular. I think that people would be surprised how much they enjoyed it, even if it were reversed, because you can still like relate no matter what. But it is like that initial like, oh yes, like I'm a human woman, and like I want to fuck that monster. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're getting a lot of recommendations in the chat too for sort of like that FF on the spectrum FF monster romance. Anne, Lillian, do you have any thoughts about that? Any books coming out that sort of appeal to that?
I mean, I have my Harpy books that Harpies of a Feather. They're technically monstrous because they can shapeshift to a certain extent. Mostly, like Kathryn said, like I don't feel like I'm necessarily the one to write the stories, but I am seeing like a lot more like women monsters, monstrous ladies coming up, like either by pre-order. It is exciting to see that grow so quickly, because it was not too long ago that monster romance like really hit its spike. And now, like, we're seeing a lot more people be like, hey, I like that, but I'm going to write it different. I'm going to write it the way I want to write it. And I really love that about independent publishing, is that it can just happen that way. and so fast.
Anne?
I actually had one on my docket to write, but then I got sick in October and I spent 6 months dealing with some health stuff and I ended up not writing it. And honestly, like CM mentioned, in addition to my health issue, it was also a business decision because nobody really seemed that excited about it. I did really well with Bitterburn, the Beast story, and I was gonna do like a trilogy of 3 monster romances. And the second one had a big drop off because Beast was a lot more popular. The second one was not quite as monstrous, and it was about Snow White's stepmother. And the third one was supposed to be a female retelling of Bluebeard, but there was really not a whole lot of response from my reader base. And when I got sick, I just decided to put my energy elsewhere. So
I think maybe you should revisit that soon because obviously people here will read it. So Crystal asks, and we only have about 7 more minutes, so I'll just try to go quickly through a couple of questions. Are there any hard limits on type of monsters that you'll write about? Lillian?
I don't think so. Right? Like that's the challenge of monster romance is, can you make this hot? Or like, can you make the character engaging that you super like empathize with them? And I think you can. Like I made a joke in one of my books that was just like, the leading lady was like, "You're not a slug, right? Like I understand you're wearing a glass, but you're not really like in your monstrous form, you're not a slug." I think I could make that work.
I believe in you.
I probably wouldn't. Like I definitely have preferences, but no hard limits.
Okay. How about you, CM?
Okay. So I cut out. Please repeat the question. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I think you were frozen for a minute too. Are there any hard limits on what kind of monsters you'll write? Oh, I do think CM is frozen. Yep, you're back. Right? Nope. All right, Anne, I'll move over to you until CM.
Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yeah. Are you back? Sorry.
I'm back.
Tech issues. Aphrodisiac slime. I like it, Penelope.
I'm so sorry. Okay,
yeah,
what was the question?
Are there any hard limits to the type of monsters you'll write? This she's gone. Okay, Anne.
First I'm gonna give a joke answer, which is a sea urchin. I don't think I could write a monster that wants to launch its innards as a form of an attack, and I don't think I could make it sexy. And then my serious answer is fascists. I will never ever write or romanticize a fascist, no matter what form they take.
I 100% love you. Kathryn?
Yes to that. I don't know about sea urchins. Probably not. But, I mean, I don't know. People love babies and they like projectile vomit. But no, I don't think there are hard limits. I read there's Alien. Oh, I don't remember it now. Alien Pleasures, I think, by Sinister Angel, and that had like a amorphous blood sex scene, and it was fantastic. I mean, it had a bunch of different kinds of monsters, but like I was like, yeah, if you can make like just a big amorphous jelly blob hot in a sex scene, like what's off the table, really?
Yeah, I can see that. Yes, that table. I mean, Lillian. What is did I already ask you?
I think you did.
I did, yeah. Okay, CM.
The limits, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
CM.
Yeah, I answered that one.
Okay, I think I'm back. Y'all can hear me? I'm not frozen anymore. I'm moving around. I'm waving around. Okay, good. What was the question?
Are there any hard rules about anything that you would not write about? Any kind of monster you would not write about? Hard limits.
Well, I thought it was horses, but apparently not. um, so back in, I want to say it was 2021, maybe 2022, when Brood X was swarming the Northeast, the cicada. Brood X was swarming the Northeast. I joked that I was going to write something called Hot Cicada Summer, and I did, but then I didn't release it because people didn't seem interested. I'm like, that's fine, I'll just release it next year. Well, the following year, there was no cicada brood. It was an extinct brood. Well, guess who's coming back in 2024? Another cicada brood. So guess what you're all going to get? Hot Cicada Summer, whether you like it or not.
About time.
So it seems very.
No, I guess there's no limit. I guess there's really no limit. I really thought horses was my limit, and here I am like teasing a centaur story. So no, apparently I'm just down here in the gutter wallowing in the sewer, and there's no, every time I hit bottom, I find another door and I keep going down.
I love that, because somebody, I think a while ago, said something, it really is, the only limit really is your imagination. Although, Anne, you said something very true to life, is that you would never romanticize a fascist, which,
Right.
you know, that's maybe a different kind of monster, not redeemable. So anyways, we're about out of time. Alexis in the Q&A wants to know if I'm going to do more of these, because they're so much fun. And honestly, you guys are welcome back anytime. Let's
I would
talk
be
about
happy
next
to
week.
come.
What? Oh, good.
I would be
Anne.
happy to.
Same.
This made my day. So just really quick, let's talk about what's up next for you. What can we look forward to your next book? I think I'm going to start with Kathryn here.
So my next book is Sanctuary with Kings. It's got monsters, but it's also like a lot of it's set in Victorian England, but deals a lot with like medieval mythology, a lot of little like Arthurian Easter eggs. And then I'm kind of taking a break from my schedule to like let my brain go bubbly. I really want to write just like a straight Regency romance just for fun. And then I have just more monsters and more witches and all of my usual favorites.
Okay. It's so funny that sort of like your Regency romance is almost like a palate cleanser.
I know. I just like, that's like my popcorn reading material is Regency romance. And so I'm like desperate to get into it. But it's just like I haven't touched anything that didn't have some element of like fantasy or science fiction or monsters or anything yet. So,
well, apparently we'll read anything you write, so we're here for that. Anne?
I have a cozy romance, which is not monstrous or spicy, but it is really sweet and adorable, called The Only Purple House in Town.
Mm-hmm.
If you pre-order it through Meet Cute Books in San Diego, you'll get all kinds of cool swag. And then as a fun side project, I'm writing an epic romantic fantasy called To Rack and Ruin on Kindle Vella. And it's like the intersection of Sarah J. Maas and Kushiel's Dart, like lots of intrigue, but also there's going to be lots of murder and lots of fucking. So you might want to check.
I know. Yeah, Anne talking fucking, I'm like, you know, wow. I mean, you all look so innocent. And then the F word comes out. It's amazing. Lillian.
I'm currently working on Hoarded by the Dragon. And I'm really excited for it. It is going to be a little longer than I thought it was going to be. So it's not going to be out until the fall in October. But I'm really excited about it. A thief who makes bad decisions and tries to steal from a dragon, and it's straight up a pregnancy book. It's a surprise pregnancy. You know, she's got to make a deal in order to get away. So,
oh my God. Dragon babies, I love it. And CM, what's up next for you?
Well, next is a Blue Ribbon Romance. That's going to be at the end of next month. And then at the end of summer is Two for Tea, which is another entry in the Cambric Creek series about a shadow creature who owns the Azatay tea shop. and the very depressed witch who goes to drown her sorrows in a cup of tea at the Azatei tea shop, and she befriends the shadowy proprietor, and they have a very, very sweet but very strange healing romance. And if any of you read my shadow creature story, Shadows and Light, you probably already know what my shadow creatures are able to do. So you can look forward to more of that. And then I am also kind of taking a little bit of a break after that, kind of like Kathryn, letting my brain heal a bit. But that's not going to reflect on my publication schedule, because I'm literally releasing a book like every single month from like September until the end of the year. But I have all of them written, so it's just going to be like popping them into Amazon and sending them out into the world, and then I'm just going to like be napping and watching 25-year-old episodes of Law and Order like nonstop for the next 3 months after my summer books are done.
Okay, well, they have the murder, but not the fucking. Funny. So, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I have not laughed this hard in so long. And obviously people here are having a ball listening in. I really appreciate you all taking your time to entertain us and educate us on monster romance. Thank you so much for being here.
You, Mina.
Thank you so much for having us back, Mina. All of my server members and my patrons, they all expressed to me after our chat back in February, what a wonderful host you were, and how we are so excited to turn you into a monster. And I think you're there. So thank you so much for inviting us back. We love our friends at the Ashland Library. We are happy to come back with you anytime. Thank you so much for taking a chance on having monsters back under your roof, and we really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh my gosh, Anne. You said yes. I was like, I think I squeed a lot. And, just having you all here talking about your books and the differences and the similarities really is so exciting to me, because I think that monster romance is such a thing right now, and it has given us such a huge escape, but also such comfort and joy through a really difficult time. So I just really appreciate what you all do.
Thank you.
So with that, I will say
this is so fun. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Lillian. And I hope your cats or dogs back there do eventually get along.
Me too. Me too.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone in the chat. Bye, ladies.